Maya Torres never saw the headlights closing in behind her, and Tyler Miles never planned to become the man accused of killing Seattle's most outspoken activist. But on a rain-soaked November night, their paths collided in a moment of rage that would shake an entire city. Rain always seemed to follow Maya Torres. It streaked across the windows of her apartment in downtown Seattle, tapping against the glass as if echoing her own restless energy. At 29, she had become one of the city's most recognizable activists. A young woman whose voice carried far beyond rallies and social media posts. She fought for housing reform, environmental justice, and accountability in law enforcement. Her followers described her as fearless, tireless, and unshakable. Yet behind the determined expression she wore in public, Maya was simply exhausted. Her days often began before sunrise, filled with calls, meetings, and planning sessions. The causes she supported demanded more than passion. They demanded presence. Still, she found purpose in it all. When crowds gathered in city parks chanting for change, Maya stood at the front, holding a megaphone, her words cutting through the noise of traffic and rain. She believed deeply in what she fought for. Every message she posted, every march she led, came from the same place, a belief that one voice could spark something larger. But activism in Seattle had grown tense. Online arguments turned into real-world threats. Protesters clashed with countergroups more often, and Maya had become a target of both praise and hate. Her name circulated on local forums, sometimes in admiration, sometimes in anger. A few messages she received late at night went beyond criticism. "You'll regret what you're doing," one read. Another said, "Stay off the streets." She showed them to friends once, laughing it off, but she never reported them. She'd told herself that giving attention to hate only fed it. Still, a sense of unease had crept into her routine. She noticed unfamiliar cars idling near her apartment and strangers lingering a bit too long at events. Whether it was paranoia or intuition, she couldn't tell. The city that once felt like a second home now carried an undercurrent of tension. Even simple drives through the urban maze of Seattle felt charged with unseen pressure. That Thursday evening, the city lights shimmered through a mist that blurred everything into shades of silver and blue. Maya had just finished a community meeting about affordable housing, an issue that always drew strong opinions. The discussion had been productive, but heated at times, leaving her both inspired and drained. When she finally stepped outside, the rain had started again, a steady drizzle that painted the streets slick and dark. She slipped into her silver Subaru, tossing her backpack onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. Her phone buzzed with notifications, messages from supporters, organizers, and local journalists. She replied to a few, then placed the phone face down. The radio played quietly as she turned onto the main road, her headlights reflecting off puddles. Traffic was light, and the city seemed unusually still. She didn't know that just a few miles ahead, another vehicle had pulled out of a parking lot moments earlier. It wasn't following her yet, not yet. But in that quiet stretch of Seattle's wet roads, the paths of two strangers had already begun to align, one unaware, one already watching. The sound of gunfire shattered the quiet rhythm of the night. It echoed through the rain, sharp and hollow, cutting through the hum of traffic on Aurora Avenue North. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights painted the wet pavement. Bystanders who had heard the shots stood frozen on the sidewalks, their phones trembling in their hands as they called for help. When the first patrol car arrived, officers found the silver Subaru crumpled against a streetlight, its engine still running and windshield slick with rain. Inside, Maya Torres was motionless, a dark stain spreading across her jacket. Paramedics rushed in, pulling her from the driver's seat as officers cleared the area. The radio chatter filled the air with fragments of confusion. Possible shooting, single victim, no suspects on scene. Within minutes, the street transformed into a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape that fluttered in the wind. The smell of gasoline mixed with the rain, heavy and metallic. Nearby, an umbrella lay overturned, its ribs bent like broken fingers. Detective Aaron Holt arrived shortly after midnight. He had seen plenty of tragedies, but something about this scene was different. Maya's name had already reached him through dispatch. He recognized it instantly. Her activism had made headlines, and now she was another statistic on a city street. There were no signs of robbery. Her purse, phone, and protest signs sat untouched. It didn't look like a random act. It looked deliberate. Officers canvassed the area, knocking on doors and gathering footage from nearby businesses. One convenience store camera caught a glimpse of Maya's Subaru moments before the crash. Behind her car, a dark SUV followed closely, its headlights glaring in the rain. The footage lasted only seconds before the screen blurred, but it was enough to establish a pattern. Another camera further down the block caught the same SUV speeding away after the sound of gunfire. Its license plate was partially visible, though the rain distorted the numbers. Detectives replayed the footage again and again, trying to sharpen the details. Witness statements were scattered and uncertain. A delivery driver claimed he saw two cars swerving erratically just before hearing the shots. Another witness thought she saw someone leaning out of a window, though she couldn't say which vehicle it was. The storm had blurred everything, the sounds, the shapes, the memories. Still, the pieces began to form a timeline. Maya had left the meeting shortly before 10:30 p.m. and was shot less than 20 minutes later. By dawn, reporters had gathered beyond the police tape, their breath visible in the cold morning air. They whispered Maya's name, some already piecing together headlines. Activists who arrived at the scene stood in disbelief, holding candles as the first photos appeared online. In the forensic tent, investigators examined the bullet retrieved from the car door. It was a single 9mm round, fired at close range from another vehicle. There was no shattered glass on the road ahead of the impact point, suggesting the shooter had pulled up beside her, aimed and fired in motion. It was quick, precise, and chillingly intentional. Detective Holt stared at the cracked glass and rain-drenched seat where she had fallen. It wasn't road rage, not just that. It felt too controlled. He didn't know yet who was behind the wheel of that dark SUV, but he could already sense it. The story of Maya Torres' death was about to stretch far beyond a single night's violence. The next morning, the Seattle Police Department AS Homicide Unit gathered in a small conference room lined with evidence boards and photographs. The case was already drawing public attention, and pressure was mounting to find answers quickly. The footage from the security cameras became their starting point. The partial license plate and the cracked bumper on the dark SUV were the only tangible leads. Detectives ran the numbers through state records, narrowing down possible matches until one name surfaced: Evan Miles, a 34-year-old construction worker living in Linwood, just north of the city. When officers arrived at Evan's home, the first thing they noticed was the black Dodge Durango parked in the driveway. The vehicle was under a tarp, but a new rear bumper gleamed through the gaps, its paint slightly mismatched. The rest of the SUV was dirty from the rain, yet that section looked freshly washed. Evan answered the door wearing work clothes, his expression calm but wary. He claimed he had spent the night at home, asleep after a long shift. He denied driving into the city and seemed unfazed when detectives mentioned the shooting. Despite his composure, his story began to unravel almost immediately. Neighbors reported hearing the Durango return close to midnight. One recalled the sound of metal scraping, as if something had been dragged along the side of the vehicle. Another mentioned Evan working on the car early the next morning, muttering to himself in the driveway. With that information, police impounded the SUV for forensic testing. Inside, they found traces of mud consistent with the area near Aurora Avenue, and faint smears on the steering wheel that suggested someone had wiped it clean. Detectives searched Evan's social media accounts and uncovered a stream of angry posts about so-called activists destroying Seattle. In several threads, he had argued with users over protests that blocked traffic, calling activists reckless and dangerous. Among his comments was a post from 2 weeks before Maya's death that read, "One of these idiots is going to get what's coming." The timing was too close to ignore. Still, the investigation hit a snag. The bullet that killed Maya was compared to registered firearms in Evans' name, but none matched. He owned 2 rifles, both legally purchased, and neither had been fired recently. The murder weapon had to come from somewhere else. Detectives began looking into Evans' family, friends, and anyone who had access to the SUV. That was when a new name appeared in the report: Tyler Miles, Evans' younger brother. Tyler had borrowed the Durango several times in the past month, and according to text messages retrieved from Evans' phone, he had asked to use it again on the night of the shooting. Tyler was 31, unemployed, and known to have a short temper. His record showed minor charges: bar fights, disorderly conduct, and 1 arrest for assault that had been dropped. When detectives visited his apartment, it was empty. The neighbors said he hadn't been home in days. On the kitchen counter, investigators found an open laptop displaying an online forum filled with violent anti-protest discussions. Among the usernames listed, one stood out: a handle that had repeatedly targeted Maya Torres by name. The account was linked to an email address registered to Tyler Miles. The puzzle pieces began to shift. It was no longer just about a road rage incident. Something darker was forming underneath. Something that connected anger, ideology, and a single deadly moment on a rain-soaked road. Detectives brought in Tyler Miles 3 days after finding his abandoned apartment. He was located at a friend's garage outside the city, trying to fix a broken motorcycle. When officers approached, he didn't resist but appeared nervous, his hands trembling as he lit a cigarette. In the interview room, Tyler's story shifted with each question. First, he claimed he had nothing to do with his brother's SUV. Then, when confronted with text messages showing he'd borrowed it the night Maya was killed, he said he had driven around for a while but didn't see anything unusual. His words came out fast, his voice cracking when asked about the shooting. Investigators laid out the evidence one piece at a time. Traffic cameras had captured the black Dodge Durango driving north on Aurora Avenue at 10:42 p.m., just 3 minutes before Maya's car crashed. GPS data from Tyler's phone placed him in the same area at that exact moment. When forensic technicians examined the SUV, they found a 9mm shell casing lodged beneath the driver's seat and faint gunpowder residue near the window. The gun itself was still missing, but the pieces were tightening around him. Tyler's background revealed a pattern of anger that had been building for years. He'd been fired from a delivery job after a confrontation with protesters who had blocked traffic during one of Maya's rallies. His supervisors described him as volatile and easily provoked. In the weeks leading up to the shooting, he had posted several online rants about attention-seeking activists. Those posts included pictures of Seattle protests, with captions hinting at revenge. Detectives believed the night Maya died wasn't random. It was an act of rage, carefully waiting for an opportunity. When forensic specialists searched Tyler's small storage unit, they found more troubling signs. A jacket matching the one seen on the SUV's driver and camera footage was hanging on a hook. Inside the pocket was a single bullet identical in brand and caliber to the one that killed Maya. Receipts showed Tyler had purchased that same type of ammunition a month earlier from a local gun shop, though no weapon had been registered under his name. Investigators began tracing the ammunition purchase back to the shop's records, uncovering a name that appeared alongside his in the sales log, an acquaintance from his past, someone who had sold guns illegally before. The man denied any involvement, but the lead hinted that Tyler might have obtained a weapon off the books. As the pressure grew, Tyler's demeanor shifted from defensive to fearful. He stopped denying and started hesitating, saying only that he had made mistakes and shouldn't have been there. He insisted he hadn't pulled the trigger, claiming someone else had been driving the SUV when the shot was fired, but he refused to name who. The investigation took a turn when detectives found a series of messages between Tyler and an anonymous online user on the same forum where Maya had been harassed. The messages were cryptic, filled with anger and encouragement to do something about it. The IP address traced back to a user in Seattle, but not to Tyler's home. It belonged to another device entirely, one registered under a prepaid account with no name attached. Every step of the inquiry made the situation more tangled. Tyler had the motive, the vehicle, the ammunition, and the opportunity. But the digital trail suggested he wasn't acting alone. Whether he had been manipulated, provoked, or assisted remained unclear. The question haunting investigators now wasn't just whether Tyler Miles had killed Maya Torres. It was who might have wanted him to. Tyler Miles vanished before detectives could move forward with formal charges. The last confirmed sighting came from a security camera at a gas station north of Seattle, where he was seen buying food, water, and a pack of cigarettes. After that, his phone went dark. Police searched his apartment again, finding clothes missing, his bank card left behind, and a handwritten note on the counter that read only, "It got too far." The city buzzed with speculation. News outlets reported the disappearance like a second crime, tying it to conspiracy theories about Maya's death. Some believed he had fled to avoid prosecution. Others thought someone had silenced him to keep him from talking. Days turned into a week and then 2. Search teams scoured wooded areas north of the city, focusing on trails near Snohomish County where Tyler was known to camp. The forest was thick and silent, rain dripping from the branches, the kind of place where evidence could disappear easily. Then, on the 12th day, 2 hikers stumbled upon an abandoned tent near a shallow creek. The fire pit was cold, filled with damp ashes, and beside it lay a torn backpack, an empty water bottle, and a partially buried handgun wrapped in plastic. The weapon was sent to the crime lab immediately. Ballistic tests confirmed it was the same gun used in Maya Torres's murder. The serial number had been filed off, but microscopic analysis matched it to an illegal firearm sale traced months earlier to an unregistered dealer in the city. Inside the tent, officers also found a notebook containing erratic scribbles, lines about guilt, anger, and betrayal. On the final page, there were only 2 words written in uneven strokes. It wasn't me. A few days later, a volunteer searcher discovered Tyler E.'s body in a ravine less than half a mile from the campsite. The medical examiner concluded he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The report suggested he had been dead for at least a week before being found. The case was officially ruled a murder-suicide, and public attention began to fade. But inside the police department, the conclusion didn't sit right. The fingerprints on the recovered handgun didn't match Tyler's. In fact, they belonged to no one in the national database. The shell casing found under the seat of the SUV also carried a partial print that wasn't his. Detectives reviewed every photo, every piece of footage, trying to locate a gap in the timeline. Somewhere between the night of the shooting and Tyler's disappearance, someone else had entered the story. A week after the case was declared closed, Detective Holt received an anonymous envelope at the station. Inside was a single flash drive containing a short video clip, grainy, dark, and filmed from a dashboard camera. It showed Maya's Subaru ahead on Aurora Avenue, the black Durango following close behind. Then, for a brief moment, another vehicle appeared from the opposite lane, slowing as the shot rang out. The flash of a muzzle came not from the Durango, but from that passing car. The vehicle sped off into the rain, disappearing into the blur of headlights. The revelation reopened every question that had been buried. Tyler Miles may have been angry, reckless, and complicit, but he might not have pulled the trigger. The true killer remained out there, hidden behind the storm of rumors and evidence that had pointed in the wrong direction. The story of Maya Torres's death didn't end in that ravine. It dissolved into uncertainty, leaving behind a trail of silence, unanswered questions, and the lingering feeling that justice had only brushed the surface of something much deeper.